Hey guys, my name is Zach. Today we're going to take a look at my 5 Hot Toys regret purchases. Now, I've been collecting Hot Toys since, I want to say 2017, and I know it's kind of a funny joke that I only own 5 Hot Toys. And so I've owned more than that. I just typically buy and sell quite a bit. So um, at the moment, I think I probably have like 8 or 9 Hot Toys, but I think in 6 scale figures, I probably have closer to like 20, 25. But let's get into this list. So starting out at number 5, we have the Hot Toys Return of the Jedi Boba Fett. This one, I did get the deluxe with the Sarlacc base. Wasn't really a big fan of that base, as you can see here. Um, and in a way, this is also the best figure that I've ever purchased. This is the figure that led to me and Dean meeting in person, and obviously Dean's my guy. So this figure has a lot of sentimental value for me. Sold it a long time ago to Rainer. But as far as the figure goes, it it was weird the way that it was assembled. The armor plates, I just didn't really like the way that it fit. It didn't really feel so much like a man in a suit. Rather, it felt more like a toy. If you look at the current Mando stuff, I think they got the body and the way the armor should wrap around the body much better. I also didn't like some of the I just felt like back then I was very cautious of figures, and I just felt like I was constantly going to break these little parts of the gauntlets here, the little switches and everything like that. um, I never really had problems with the jetpack. I remember that being back then a big complaint people had. I've never, with any of the Boba Fetts that I've owned, had any problems with that. But it was a fun figure. It was my first, actually it was my second Hot Toys. It was my third 1/6 scale figure, but this one, I bought it. Dean and I had started talking. He had just purchased a 1/6 scale figure from another store. It was the Sideshow Boba Fett. And after seeing his photos and his poses and how happy he was with that one, I went ahead and picked up one of my own. This was actually the V2 Sideshow Boba Fett. I did just add the LED base there. And with this one, I took the figure apart. I put it on a different body. I dyed the flight suit a blue color. I might have gone a little too blue, but I dyed it blue, and then I did a few other modifications to the height. I think I added ankle risers and shortened the arms just a little bit, and I was really happy with how this came out. And this was my Boba Fett for, I want to say, a year or two before I got rid of it. So at number 5, we have the Hot Toys Boba Fett. Looking at number 4, we have the Hot Toys Civil War Black Panther. This one I got totally on a whim. I was at a comic store. They had a really good price on it. I think it was like a trade-in item that someone had used to pay off some other comics or some other statues. And I picked this one up. I think it was 180, 170 back then. I think the retail price on this one was like 230, 225, something like that. And right away, just looking at it, I felt that the body looked weird. Um, it looked very heroic, but it didn't really look anything like the way Chadwick Boseman looked in Civil War, which is what this figure is based on. And I ended up getting rid of this one, gosh, probably within a week or two of purchasing it. I just did not like the posability. I felt like the hands were perhaps a bit too large. I felt like the suit, it just, none of it really vibed. And looking at it now, when you compare the MMS 363, which is what I regret purchasing, compared to the MMS 671, you can see they really changed quite a bit. I guess the hands probably aren't really that different size, but the proportions, the body shape, it looks much more natural on the new version. And that is why I regretted this purchase. But it's nice to see Hot Toys going back and revisiting the classic Civil War / first Black Panther suit. Now, coming in at number 3, it's the Hot Toys Iron Spider. And it's a shame because this suit, you know, if you watch the MCU, this suit has a ton of appearances, and I really, really wanted to like the suit. I think when I got this suit, at this point, the suit had only been in Infinity War, and as the movies kept going and this suit kept showing up, I was kind of upset that I sold it, but having it in hand, I just didn't feel like the suit itself was that posable. And for a spider character, obviously you want to have that posability. It was very restrictive, in my opinion. I felt like it was a suit that would damage easily. If you look at my whole history of figures that I regret buying, not just even outside of this top 5, a lot of it was like the idea that I had that it could become damaged, and I wanted to sell it before it did get damaged. And I couldn't really pose it, right? I felt like I couldn't pose it well. I felt like it was always going to break. It did have some cool, I believe it had light up eyes, which actually looked really good. But this one, I think I bought it and sold it genuinely, I think the next day, which is also the case for my number 2. Now, my number 2 biggest regret is the Hot Toys Mark 50. And I was so excited for this figure. I probably was too excited. I put this on a huge pedestal. And I remember getting it, and leading up to the purchase, I had bought the figure there on the right, which was the suit that he wears, the nanotech suit from the beginning of the film, and I had bought it, and it was tailored for a certain body, so I bought the proper body. I was going to be able to use that head sculpt on this this version. I think the glasses came with this kit as well. And at this point, I had already had, I want to say 2 or 3 other Iron Man figures. I've owned, by this point, I think I've owned probably about 8 when I purchased this figure. But I had only still kept at least Retro Sneaky and the Mark III diecast. And I remember getting this figure and being immediately disappointed. He was huge. And I know that's kind of a problem that I've talked with a lot on CW, where the scale creep is what I call it. And looking at this photo here, I mean, you can just see how big this figure was, even compared to a standard 6 scale body at the time. I think maybe I could have gone with angle extenders on the Tony Stark figure, but still, I mean, this thing dwarfed the Tony Stark figure. And I know it's technically accurate that he gains a little bit of height when he gets into the suit, but it just looks so silly on display when even on a base it was still shorter. And then compared to my Mark III diecast, I think I may have had the Mark 42 diecast at this time. I mean, this figure dwarfed these in height. It was really weird on the shelf. Dean, I think I had called Sideshow right away, and I was like, I'm just not happy with this. This figure is huge. It's like, it's massive, and I don't like it. And I remember they told me, I think at that time, it was like a pretty significant ding if you returned it. I think it was something like 30% restocking fee, or I don't recall. This was years ago. And so I had asked a few friends if they wanted to purchase it. Dean had said, like, yeah, let me take it home, let me play with it, let me mess with it, and if I don't like it, I'll bring it back, but if I do like it, I'll purchase it. He had that figure for probably no less than an hour and sent me a message. He's like, bro, I hate this thing. It's way too tall. I don't think he really liked the articulation or any of the features. And so the next like few days he had brought it back, and I want to say I sold this one pretty cheap on the groups. I don't recall how I got rid of it, but it looked good in a bubble, but once you put it next to other figures, I think it just kind of looked way too big. And now I think it's fine. I think now that they've made these other Iron Man figures taller, I do think that it is better. Like it looks better, but when you have to think about how this was back then a few years ago, it was just way too big. So got rid of it and do not regret it. My last figure from the thumbnail, this one's a doozy. It's the Hot Toys T-800 Police Shootout / T-800 Battle Damage from Terminator 1. Now let me explain. I owned this figure once before, and my collection in the early days went through phases. I did like an all Star Wars phase, an all DC phase, an all Iron Man phase, an all Marvel phase. And at this point in my collecting, I was doing my favorite films phase. which I guess is kind of where I'm at now. But when I had changed back to Star Wars, I had sold my first copy of this figure. And I always regretted it. I always regretted it. And when I had the chance to get this figure back, not my original copy, but a different one, I was too excited that I was blinded by this figure. Now, this regret has nothing to do with the figure. This is a fantastic figure. May honestly be one of the best Hot Toys ever made, in my opinion. Now, Rainer had found a copy of this at a pawn store. And I remember immediately being like, bro. Now, Rainer buys and sells a lot of things. So when he buys something, it's always for sale. And I remember messaging him like, I need to have this. Let's make a deal. And at that time, I didn't have a lot of money, but he had wanted a comic that I had that he had seen in my office. And it was it hurts to say it. It was a Thrawn 1 in 50, I think it's the Matina variant. I'm probably mispronouncing the name. It's been years since I've even looked at it. This comic, last I checked, like a year or two ago, was worth like $1,500. I got bamboozled on this trade, and it wasn't mine or Rainer's fault. At that time, the comic wasn't worth a ton. It was worth a little bit, but not a ton. But I was jaded by my excitement, and he's like, "Let's do the deal." And between the time we had agreed to the deal and like an hour later when I made it to his house, he had discovered that it was missing the base. And to me, I was like, fuck, that really sucks. It's not a deal breaker, but it's certainly like giving me cause for pause. And eventually we had decided to go through with the deal. Now, again, in my head, I had assumed, and it's not Rainer's fault, it's not my fault, but I should have inspected the figure before we completed the deal. Because when I got home, I had found that both of the sleeves, now it does have battle damage on the jacket, but both of the sleeves, the entire sleeves, if you look right here, were were peeling up, and there were other parts of the jacket that were not supposed to be flaking that were flaking. The silver pistol, I think it's the one with the laser sight, the scope, which has a scope and a laser sight. Anyways, the scope was broken off. It indeed did not have the base, and I want to say there was some other issues with the figure, that it was in much worse condition than he had said, but also like it was both our faults. We both didn't check the figure. Like, he had bought it. I think it may have been in the box when he bought it, and I had purchased it before we had inspected it. It was all around just a bad situation. I ended up selling this. I want to say it was about 6 months later. I tried my best to fix the flaking on the jacket. I couldn't do it, and as such, to this day, especially what I sold it for, which wasn't terrible, but certainly nowhere near the value of that comic now. In fact, just to make myself cry here, let's see if we can find the comic. So Thrawn 1 in 50. I think it was a 9.6. That was the only thing. Yeah, so keep in mind, this is asking price. This isn't selling price. But I mean, people are asking like $1,100 for this comic, and yeah, it's this version here, which is the mine was CGC, but it's this one here with his face, and yeah, it was a tough nut to swallow, as Ben would say. But yeah, those are my top 5 regrets in Hot Toys purchases. If this video does well, I'll go into maybe my top 5 non-Hot Toys regrets, maybe my top 5 favorite Hot Toys, maybe my top 5 worst figures I've ever purchased, because there are some bad figures that I've purchased in, 6-7 years almost of collecting. And yeah, let me know in the comments what your top 5 regrets are, and what you think of mine, because I think mine, they're interesting for sure. But thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys liked the video. Give it a like, give it a comment, give it a subscription, and we'll catch you on the next episode.